Hey, and welcome to another episode of Guys Like Us Don't Die in Toilets, a Lethal Weapon retrospective. Today we'll be discussing Lethal Weapon 2, the film that came out in 1989. So, I'm Jake. I'm back with a new guest host with me. We're going to jump right into it after I introduce him, kind of like they do in Lethal Weapon 2. But with me today I have Mike Sains, a good friend of mine. I met him at the comic shop a couple years ago when I was working there. Fellow nerd, writer, editor, collector of all things vinyl, pop figures. Good dude. I've been trying to get him on a podcast for a while because he's quite the podcaster himself. So, Mike, thank you so much for being on. I look forward to talking about Lethal Weapon 2 with you, man.
I'm excited to bang on some roofs and enjoy this show.
Oh, dude, yeah. And also,
this movie.
before we really, truly jump into the movie, kind of give us a little bit of like where Lethal Weapon falls in your life and why. Because you were one of the first people I asked, not even just Lethal Weapon. I was like, hey, Mike, I want to have you on the show. What Mel Gibson movie do you want to talk about? And you were like, Lethal Weapon 2. Mm-hmm. So let's what's this movie mean to you before we start dissecting this action classic?
Okay, so I started watching rated R movies pretty early. Like, I think the first rated R movie I can remember seeing is The Last Boy Scout with Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans. And I just kind of worked my way back. Like, my family owned Lethal Weapon on VHS. Like, my mom and dad always wanted to have the most recent whatever you could get. Like, movies always took a long delay to get from the theater to VHS. But with Lethal Weapon, it seemed like we always had the VHSs right as soon as they came out. So as soon as I was allowed to watch rated R movies, I was like, well, what do we have in the house right now? And Lethal Weapon was it. I started with the first one, which is, a small scale movie, but it's still the themes. You got to remember, again, like, I was maybe 6.5, 7 years old at this point, like, just absorbing it as pop culture.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is some really, really heavy stuff. The first one, you're dealing with like PTSD on a huge scale, suicidal tendencies, all that stuff, in the context of an 80s action movie, which is pure gold. So when the second one came around, there was the expectation of like more of the same. And while that is true, I remember even as a kid being like, well, this is something totally different. Like, it's Lethal Weapon plus all these other extra things. Particularly with the social commentary stuff. Number two, obviously the big theme being apartheid.
Absolutely.
And at the time, as a mixed race child at the time, I was very aware of the fact, like, oh, these guys aren't just evil, they're racist too. So there's like this added element, and it's pretty clear in the movie too, where it's like, we can do more to these people because they're not just bad, they're also super gross.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I remember, like, this podcast is a good example of always do your research, because we got together, we watched the movie, and we've watched this movie combined who knows how many times.
I don't even know.
It's absurd. But the crazy thing is, I don't know if it was two like minds watching the movie together and really, thinking about dissecting it. It's like we watched the movie for the first time. And I think we have some really fascinating shit to talk about with this movie. And it was interesting too, because I remember asking about like how big was it to have a white guy and a black guy team up in a movie, and like you were saying, like a mixed race thing, like that was huge for you to see that happen.
Yeah, and not only that, Murtaugh's the guy with his shit together.
Yeah,
he's the straight man. Danny Glover's the guy where it's like, all right, we got to wrangle this crazy white man and deal with this. And the cops even in these movies, like, I want to get into this more later, but it's almost like an anti-Tom Cruise movie where everyone in the police station, they feel like they're part of like a larger family.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all there on an equal setting, rather than like Riggs is your man, so we're all going to do everything to elevate him, a la a Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And like it was very modern in that way, where it Lethal Weapon 1, that is barely addressed. Like the racial element of Danny Glover being the guy in charge, that is barely even focused on. But in 2, it becomes the center point. I mean, like, there's even quotes, "But you're black." Like, everybody remembers that line from Lethal Weapon 2. And it's just like, they even, I feel like, in a very meta way, address that, where like Danny Glover walks into the bank expecting service, thinking like, well, what is the problem? Like, and you actually have to like stop and say, but you're black. I don't know. Even as a kid, you can feel it. It's almost palpable. But again, in the context of a very fun, big budget 80s action movie.
Exactly. I mean, this movie starts with like the Looney Tunes theme.
It is the Three Stooges in the context of like, if you just put two of the Three Stooges in a movie for a third of it and then introduce the third one in Leo Gets halfway around, it's by that time you are literally doing Three Stooges bits in the hotel room.
And I remember you asked a really interesting question about Leo. Is Leo gay? And then not only that, is he gay Quentin Tarantino? Because the scene where he's like ranting about the drive-thru. Also, they go to a Subway drive-thru, which I don't know about those.
Never seen one in my life.
Never. Also, speaking of Subway, excuse me, we're 99.9% sure Nathan Fillion is in a Subway commercial in the beginning of that movie.
I saw him with my two eyes.
Yeah. And also another thing that we talked about with my best good friend Kevin on the first Lethal Weapon podcast was the movie, the Lethal Weapon series as a whole, and especially in Lethal Weapon 2, will take the time to keep that family atmosphere alive. Like, there's no reason for an action movie in the 80s, 1989, where you think of all the other movies that came out in 89, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, License to Kill, Back to the Future 2, Batman, like...
They all sent around one man.
Exactly. Lethal Weapon 2 takes the time to show Murtaugh's daughter in a condom commercial, that only pays off because it's funny. And it also, it keeps that family atmosphere where the cops make the condom tree, and we were joking, like, one or maybe two or three like PAs had to go and make this condom tree. They had to go to a store.
They had to make several.
They had to go to a store and be like, "Hey, I'm working on this movie. Can I buy like 50 condoms because I'm making a condom tree for Lethal Weapon 2?"
Also, where is the foliage? Like, can I buy a cactus here? Can I buy a bonsai tree here? I need to find trees and things to be able to put it on, like little rubber bands.
Yeah.
And then they had to sign off on that tree, and then they had to like screen test it.
Yeah. Which tree? Do we want it to be taller? Do you want it to be wider? Do you want it? How do we want this thing to look? But yeah, that's some of the great things about Lethal Weapon 2, and what I'll mention all throughout this series is they cast the same family members. You see them age, the same house. You see the boat be built, destroyed. And so it's just this amazing family atmosphere that it only gets better as the series goes on. Now, something about 2 that's fascinating is most people, I think, would consider 2 the best Lethal Weapon movie. I kind of thought out loud during the last podcast, is 1 or 2 my favorite, and I'm still leaning a little bit more towards 1. And I think what we did in deconstructing this movie, it really changes how we look at Lethal Weapon 2. Because basically what happens with Lethal Weapon 2 is, and we talked about the original ending, which the original ending for 1 was there was never supposed to be a sequel. This was never supposed to be something that keeps going. And the original ending for 2 that we found out is that Riggs is supposed to die, basically, in Murtaugh's arms.
In doing the research for this podcast, both of us, I think you found out and I found out independently, number one, that Shane Black left this movie halfway through, and I think both of us then went, well, why would he have left the movie?
Yeah.
And independently of each other.
It's his character,
right.
So he created it.
Shane Black, like you said while we were watching, coming straight out of college, had Lethal Weapon. This is his baby.
Yeah.
After the first one, the studio said, well, we have you under contract and we want another one. You need to recreate that magic, even though he did not want to do that.
Yeah.
Then he does that. He gives them their second one. He ends it how he wants to end it. They won't even let him have that.
Yeah. So
he walks away 3/4 of the way through a film about a guy who is clearly like in a good place, then has that all taken away from him, is ready to die, dies, and somehow doesn't at the end.
And it's funny because I don't want to say, because for the longest time, like, I'm always for more Lethal Weapon. Like, I'm not, at the end of the day, I'm not like, if Riggs should have died and there should have never been a 3 and 4, because whatever,
it
otherwise
this
would be 2 podcasts long. As opposed to 4, So, but the thing is, and I don't want to say it ruined it, but watching it with you, and like I said, you had the notepad and we were really thinking about it. I kind of wish Riggs died, and I feel like you feel the same way too. And not only that, the big question I asked before we started watching the movie was, should we have been told about the fate of Riggs's wife? Should it have been attached to the South African character?
Because that's the biggest gripe. Any loyal fan of the Lethal Weapon franchise, or even like anyone relatively familiar with the franchise, thinks, well, how in this sequel all of a sudden do these South African people who are literally from halfway around the world have anything to do with the death of his wife from the first movie?
Yeah.
And that tie-in is really ridiculous, but knowing what we know now, that Riggs ultimately was supposed to go on this like collision course with death directly and be his own demise.
Yeah.
That twist is essential.
Yeah.
It's essential to that story, and if it had have been executed properly, it would have taken the idea of the 80s action movie buddy cop setup and just blown the whole thing up.
The path of the 90s action movie might have changed forever.
Completely.
Because, like I said, going into this, I was like, we don't need to know about Riggs' wife dying, and Riggs needs to live. And watching this movie, I've totally switched, which is why I'm so glad we're doing this podcast, because it's such a fun thing that, like, I've totally changed on this idea now.
Right, I honestly sat down ready to analyze, like, moment for moment, and, the classic Lethal Weapon, like, repartee, and like that's the dynamic
we
and
get
all that stuff.
The guys like us don't die in toilets from this one, the famous scene on the toilet with Riggs and Murtaugh, and you get a little more of the... do we go on 3, 1, 2, 3 in the beginning? Some of the more gags that occur through, but we kind of like discover this whole other thing. Yeah,
it's like it becomes a complete dissection of one scene in the third act right before the credits roll. Mm-hmm. Like literally, Lethal Weapon movies have this way of just starting and ending. There is no like pretty wrap up at least in the first two.
Yeah.
In the third and fourth, they start to get more smooth, I guess you would say. But
sure,
if this movie ended with Martin Riggs, literally, I watched that scene right before I got here. He eats a full clip. Okay, that South African boss man shoots him with a full 9
He also has
clip.
been stabbed and got the shit kicked out of him before
He's
that.
bleeding out of an artery.
Yeah.
And somehow he doesn't die. And like I'm sitting here still kind of stuck on like who in I want to know specifically who in the studio had the audacity to be like, no, this is an easy workaround. All you have to do is put a cigarette in his mouth, and then they laugh about it, and then the like the air claps and guitar comes
they have the one line that when we watched it with this new mindset, we were like, there it is. There is the change of Lethal Weapon 2 where he goes, I thought you were dying on me. You're going to make it,
I even wrote the guy's name down. Like it's almost like I have a bounty on him in my mind. Jeffrey Boehm.
Oh, yeah, who wrote Last Crusade.
Yeah, and who ended up coming in to do the rewrite to patchwork the movie right at the very end, which is like they should have included more rewrites to make it feel less like a man on the path to self-destruction, because that's all it is until the very, very end.
Because now that he doesn't die, having his wife explain makes no sense. It's unnecessary. Because what also happens is his then girlfriend at the time is killed, in his Letterman's jacket. That's enough for him to want to kill the bad guys, You got to get to like Lethal Weapon.
Still like the darkest moment in any 80s action movie.
Well, the thing that's crazy is, like you said, he becomes a Punisher movie in the end.
It is a Punisher
because
movie.
when the guy and the great thing is the character, the South African who kills Murtaugh's wife, basically, or Riggs' wife. What basically happens is you find out kind of brilliantly throughout Lethal Weapon 2 with the great sequence with the pen, the real nitty-gritty of what happened the night Riggs' wife died. You find out that they were supposed to meet for a dinner. Riggs was on the job. It was going late, so she decided to drive home. And on the way home, she died in a car accident. That's all we know.
And that's discussed over Murtaugh's wife. She's literally like washing dishes, and Riggs is sitting at their dinner table just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, because she found a pen and it means something to him.
Right, and then the reveal of the relationship between the South African henchman and Riggs is revealed in a very casual way during this, like, the end of the surfboard decapitation car chase scene.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, Martin Riggs? You're Martin Riggs?
Yeah. And he's like, yeah.
Interconnection, done, boom, just blown right over. And then, even more so, the grand reveal where it's supposed to be like, I killed your wife, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
It's not even like that. The guy is sitting on a boat, hunched over, lighting a cigarette, like, I killed your wife, right?
Yeah. Like, by the way. It's this weight.
Not for nothing.
Yeah, like he's probably killed hundreds of people. There's weight lifted off almost weight lifted off his shoulders where, Riggs is in the straitjacket. And he's like, I thought I was killing you. And I ran the car off the road. And this is like where he gets sinister in his portrayal of playing it almost tired.
Like an old government official who just like does not want to do his job.
Is this thing is to my surprise, when I pulled back the mop of bloody hair, and it was your wife.
That line of dialogue.
And Riggs, to Mel Gibson's credit, he doesn't play the easy acting choice, which is, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
It's a crazy Mel Gibson
He just
voice.
sits there. He just sits there because what's happening now is he's turning into Lethal Weapon 1 Mel.
Right, because
Riggs.
Previous to that moment, Martin Riggs, all throughout Lethal Weapon 2, is literally acting like he's in the Three Stooges.
Yeah, I mean,
like he's having a great time doing everything he's doing.
He's happy because he's not over the death of his wife, but he, again, like we said in the first podcast, he gives that hollow point bullet to Murtaugh in a really great emotional scene at the end of 1. Like, you saved my life,
Complete
dude.
closure.
You saved my life, dude. We're done. Thinking, okay, we're good.
Right.
We're gonna kill the South African bad guys because they're bad guys and they're racists, and that's never cool. But what we get instead is like this moment where he's just like, and the other moment where he had to stop and rewind it was, she's not dead yet. When he pulls the hair back, he has to kill her then.
Yeah, he has to assist in that moment, and
he doesn't tell her how he kills her. That's just however you think that he kills his wife, right? Strangled,
which is
shoot.
even worse.
Yeah.
It leaves you up to your imagination.
Yeah, and he's like, "All right, we'll see you later," and they throw him in the river
for him to see his newly murdered new girlfriend.
Yeah, not only that, the same people responsible for the death of his wife is the death of his girlfriend, who's giving him more happiness, right? In his Letterman's jacket.
His jacket.
And the great thing, and the great sinister thing is, he doesn't get a chance to save her. Like, there's no
she's already dead.
There's no point where she's like, save me, Riggs. He's like, tell us where,
right.
blah blah blah.
The damsel in distress moment, like,
get
to her.
They already got Leo Getz, so yeah, she's dead. Oh. Like, Riggs has failed yet again, right? And you get the moment where that pays off, where the running gag starts in this one. He dislocates his shoulder. He gets out and he savagely kills 2 dudes.
Yeah, he is. It's the portrayal. If they even addressed his PTSD in any way, it would be so masterful. But it's just Mel Gibson unhinged in this.
He does the classic, with the chain around, and he kingpins, for lack of a better word, the dude. He smashes the guy's head.
Smashes his head in a car, and it's even more grisly to me in this version because his head doesn't just watermelon.
No.
You know what I mean? It's just a neck snap, which is to me more brutal because you actually see the guy's head getting smashed on screen.
Yeah,
it's dark.
Yeah.
It is so it takes a movie that was just a story of 2 cops facing a bunch of really sinister but comedically, stereotypically evil bad guys, messing with them, getting the justice they deserved. But if this whole thing riding on diplomatic immunity because they can't serve them justice, well, then we're just going to go off the deep end. And
can we talk about the diplomatic immunity thing? Because this movie points out the glaring fact that they can do whatever they want. And if we're going by the law, Martin Riggs and Murtaugh are the bad guys.
They're the only 2 people, according to the reality of this movie, who have broken the law.
Yeah. At the end of the movie, if we're led to believe, let's go with the original ending here, that Riggs dies and Murtaugh's there holding his best friend as he's dead. The cops show up and they have to arrest.
Right, the cops
Murtaugh.
are there for Murtaugh, not the South African guys.
They're like, dude, you broke the law.
Right, you keep coming after these diplomats who we continually tell you can't do anything to, and you do not listen.
And if Riggs and Murtaugh, they become vigilantes at the end of the movie.
Yeah, he even puts a black hat on. He becomes a black hat.
Like I said, he's the Punisher at the end of the movie. Also, when he puts his shoulder back into place, we were saying that's the moment where he hits the timer for the detonation of Martin Riggs.
Yeah.
Because I think, like you're saying, the quote-unquote problem with the Lethal Weapon 2 ending changing is that the whole previous movie is acted out to our assumption that he's going to die. And so throwing in that idea of him living at the end is just jarring thing. Now you're happy because, yes, Martin Riggs is alive and we get to see a third one. But again, if we're going by they both live, now they're in jail. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
that's the crazy part where it's are they now going to be punished? Is this going to now turn into Tango and Cash where they go to jail for a year and a half?
Mel Gibson's going to dress up in drag.
Kurt Russell. Big shout out to Kurt Russell.
Yeah, right.
Should do that anthology.
Oh, yeah.
But
a bonus has nothing to do with Lethal Weapon, but Tango and Cash is fantastic. I love that movie. Rambo is a pussy.
We just lost the bad guy. I'm getting off the rails now. Where were we?
Well, no, but just talking about the fallout of two cops becoming vigilantes, killing guys who had diplomatic immunity. And just the total ridiculousness of diplomatic immunity that is glaringly shown the problem in Lethal Weapon 2. Because Riggs, remember, as a cop, there is a montage of him just screwing with the South Africans. He's not even doing He's not even doing police work. He's just screwing with him at the traffic stops,
in cars and outside and in protests.
With protests, and then he goes in and kills his fish. You know,
he literally kills his fish.
Yeah, with an but it's crazy to me because, like we were saying, the whole movie is leading up to Riggs' death. When he pops his shoulder back in, he is unlike Riggs. He's unlike a Riggs we ever see again. Because, like I said, the point is he is going to kill everyone who's in his way, and he's not going to stop until who he needs to have dead. And if he dies in the process, good, fine, because he has nothing else. You know, he gets when he calls up Murtaugh, I'm not a cop anymore.
He tries to talk him down.
Yeah, and the great thing is the great chemistry between Riggs and Murtaugh is this conversation has happened before, the way that Murtaugh plays it.
Well, we talked about this while we were watching it. It's the shorthand in their relationship where, going back to when Murtaugh's on the toilet, and there's that moment right before they're about to pull him off the toilet, and he's like, do we go on 3? And then right before they do that, he's like, hey, man, I just wanted to... And then they can't say it, and Riggs just goes, I know, dude. I know. And it's like this tough man talk shorthand that they have. And if you had that... what am I even trying to say?
Well, I think because one of the things, we became the for lack of a better, the Monday morning director kind of thing, where we're like, hey, could you imagine if Lethal Weapon 2 followed the ending where Riggs dies, and as he's dying, they have their hands locked like this, and he looks at Murtaugh and he goes, hey, Murtaugh. And he goes, I know, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
And he dies?
Yeah.
While they're playing Knocking on Heaven's Door?
Which literally happens if you go back and watch the scene, as Riggs is lying there, Knocking on Heaven's Door is playing.
Yeah,
solidifying the theory that he
almost holding him like like Christ, like just like insane.
Korea.
But like, not to get like totally ridiculous, but the thing is too, we were almost remember we were joking that like the scene where he dies could very well be in the movie, because there's a scene where he's like Raj, and then you see there's no more like movement in his throat. He kind of
takes his last breath,
and you get Raj isn't there for it. And then we did some research thinking like supposedly there were shots or photographs of like a body bag, like they put Riggs in the body bag. And then here's the crazy thing too, we watched the end of the movie with director commentary with Richard Donner
or lack thereof.
Yeah, we all love Richard Donner. He's the man. We love him, but he clearly doesn't want to be there because he's just just like, oh yeah, this is cool. I like the scene. Mel's funny in this one. Yeah. Hey, you think that's Mel Gibson fighting in that scene?
You're talking way too fast. This is like every 40 seconds he says these things. And like over the most controversial scene, which he knows in real life he's probably talked about 100 times with various people, in the director's commentary, he just plays it off like it's nothing at all. Like the pivotal director creative choice between him and the writer that caused Shane Black to leave, he just plays it off. What were his words?
He goes,
if it was bad, we had the option to kill him off. But if it was a good movie, we would just keep it going.
Yeah, what we're led to believe is as the ambulances are driving over the bridge to, where Riggs and Murtaugh are, and Knocking on Heaven's Door is playing. Yeah, he basically says, with test screenings, if this movie didn't turn out well, we had the chance to end it. Which was his way of saying, like, if the movie sucked, we would have killed him. and our thing is,
so rude.
And our thing is, watching it now, it's like, dude, the movie could have been like, I mean, the movie's great, but the movie could have been like astounding if they killed Riggs at the end, because it all leads to Riggs dying. Like the whole point of the movie that we get to in the third act is Riggs is the loose cannon again. He can't be stopped, and that's it. The bomb goes off.
Yeah, and I think with Lethal Weapon in particular, as far as action movies go, it has this sort of level of social commentary and commentaries about action movies themselves within the films. Like the condom moment, the dolphin tuna issue, the weird social commentary stuff. But then within action hero movies, I honestly think Shane Black was fully aware of the fact that he had created or sort of mastered this buddy cop thing that was established in 48 Hours, another 48 Hours, Lethal Weapon, and now Lethal Weapon 2. And I think he knowingly made the choice to try and blow the whole genre itself up And it would have really, honestly, separated the Lethal Weapon franchise from the whole pack, not just as an action movie, but as a statement itself. Mm-hmm. Like, we are declaring this to be like the end of an era. 1990 is right around the corner. Let's try to maybe change it up a little. But instead, the studio decided, no, we got 2 more left in us.
I mean, it always comes down to money, you know.
Yeah.
Like money.
The movie made $225 million over the last 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, you know, money over, you know, story any day with it, you know. And like I said, you know, we're not like these revisionists now saying Lethal Weapon 2 sucks by any standards.
No,
we're
not
just
at
saying,
all.
We're just saying that, like, could you imagine? Because, like, what we're saying is watch the movie with that idea
with
now.
that lens.
With that lens, because for the longest time I watched it thinking, like, there's no need to show Riggs' wife or explain Riggs' wife thing, because this dude's his Blofeld, you know?
He
you know,
is, Is
the
that, like, author of all your pain.
Is this South African, like, hitman? Is the author of all of Riggs' pain.
Yeah.
And also, remember, we were thinking that, like, if that's the case, we've been following you for you know, years.
Right.
The South Africans are behind Lethal Weapon 1.
That's right. Which means, while the whole Lethal Weapon 1 thing's going down, Mr. Joshua's burning his forearm and all this crazy stuff, and right just outside the periphery vision are South African guys marionetting the whole situation.
South Africans, are with their diplomatic immunity, are sending Mr. Joshua on a tear to be killed on the front lawn of Murtaugh's
No hints of
house.
like a larger boss at play or any of that stuff in the first movie. It's just we just somehow shoehorn this in.
Yeah.
And like if you get past that and accept that and see it for what it is, like it makes all these changes. Like it just feels like there is a lot of studio notes over the course of the end products of these movies. Like you can almost feel the creative pivots versus the forced pivots in everything, in the whole franchise and the whole series. Even with the intensity of Riggs' problems and all that stuff, which get downplayed over the 20 years.
Yeah,
but I'm sitting here wondering as we're recording this, what would Lethal Weapon 2 look like if Riggs didn't self-destruct? Like if his girl did die and he was somehow able to just like, I don't know, I'm not going to say bounce back, but not go full Frank Castle.
Well, here's the thing, like, I think what we're saying is because they added the wife in there is what he couldn't hold back. Like, is there the possibility that if it was just the girlfriend, that Riggs had learned enough from Murtaugh, from the first Lethal Weapon, from what happens in between 1 and 2? Because the great thing about 2 is 2 starts out mid-car chase. Like
you're already in it.
Yeah, they're like, hey guys, you have the pleasure of seeing what you've missed. You know, you'll never see what you missed. You know, between 1 and 2. Like South Park did it with the Go God Go episode, which is so fantastic. It's not part 1 and part 2. It's like part 1 and part like 15. Like there's stuff you'll never see. But yeah, I mean, the idea of just the girlfriend dies. Riggs is pissed. Pops his shoulder back in, kills those 2 dudes, maybe doesn't smash the guy's head with a car door. But, what if the idea is like, Murtaugh's like, hey, man, he's got like that bullet as a constant reminder. Like, don't go there, Yeah,
that never comes up once. Like, hey, let's not go down that road again.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like
it's
you do you.
It's so minusculely there in the phone call they have. Because remember, Riggs gets what he wants out on the phone call, and he's not even talking into the receiver anymore. He's talking to himself, but he still has the phone out.
Yeah, he's just
and he's
yelling.
He goes,
with
they killed her.
phone
They killed her. They killed both of her, Raj. I'm not a cop.
They took everything away.
They took everything. They killed her. And Murtaugh's sitting there going, oh shit, oh shit. And he puts his badge in the drawer. And
after saying the line, we're not cops anymore.
We're not cops anymore. And then remember they meet up. They have the 2 cars. They screech together like in the stunt stop or whatever.
Literally arrive at the destination at the same time.
Because Leo's getting the shit kicked out of him in the
house on stilts.
In the house on stilts. So she gets pulled down by super angry, Riggs.
GMC trucks.
Yeah.
Powerful enough to pull down a goddamn house.
Yeah. But there's that, like, again, said but not said moment between Riggs and Murtaugh where Riggs is just sitting there with the nondescript hat, and Murtaugh he can't even, he knows that he's got to let the beast loose. There's nothing he can do. Like, he can only be, like we were joking, the bumpers in bowling.
Exactly. He's the guy that has to wrangle this quite literally Tasmanian devil in Mel Gibson.
With the hair and everything. Well, and then also remember they find the drug money. And
he's like, take it, dude.
Yeah. He's like, this could pay for my kid's college. He goes, take it.
Yeah, he's completely lost any sense of like right or wrong. He's like, we live, we die.
Yeah,
you know? He's
yeah. And
like
tonight I'm gonna die, but I'm gonna kill everyone who gets in my way. The Mad Max Fury Road. Chris is
but as he goes, like, witness.
Yeah, witness me as he jumps out. You know, he rappels down because he kicks Murtaugh in first. But they have like assault rifles. You know what I mean? Like they go and he's not there. And then the other thing too is like you were saying, we get to know all of these great side characters. Dean Norris being one of them from Breaking Bad fame.
Very fit.
Yeah, and they're all in and what's her name from Aliens and T2.
I cannot remember her name.
Is it Rodriguez in Aliens?
Yeah, the brilliant character actress. Yes. Who turns in real life, I learned through research, is actually like a very nice older Jewish lady now. And my whole life I thought she was actually Spanish.
Yeah,
she's just that.
I did too until you told me. Yeah, seriously, props to her, man.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But you see, they all get picked off one by one.
Like that sequence is very Godfather, not Godfather. Goodfellas, where anybody involved with a robbery is going to get wasted. That montage is so brutal.
Yeah.
It is. There are moments of darkness in Lethal Weapon that just don't happen in other action movies, and that is one of them. I think the couple in Lethal Weapon 2 are the montage of the cops getting killed, the girlfriend getting killed, and then the wife stuff. And it is dark, like art house almost.
Yeah.
And even the cinematography leading up to those moments, like, anybody close up in the foreground is, I actually, like, we analyzed this as I was watching it, like, things on the outside are out of focus, and it feels like very arty, and then things pop off. And it's just, I don't know, it's like a level of craftsmanship that I feel like if they had followed through, it would have actually brought all those things more to light, just when you watch it normally.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Murtaugh walks.
Trying to elevate it a little bit.
Yeah, but like, Murtaugh's like the sole survivor. If we're led to believe the original, he walks off like the spaghetti western,
Yeah, and his poor family.
Yeah, like
left to pick up.
I'm too old for this shit, and I'm going to retire now because I have nothing left, or I'm gonna get arrested because I broke the law.
Is there a retirement now?
Yeah, but I mean, so we get all those. All the cops are killed, and it's just this. And they take the time for you to meet them, like I said, with the condom tree, and they're making jokes
poker
about
nights
the movie. Poker nights, and then also a scene that I feel like we need to touch on is the toilet scene. Like, not only do we get the name of the podcast from that, but that is like a beautiful scene where it's about friendship. It's not about cops. It's not about really anything driving the plot. Because yes, the bad guys want to kill the good guys.
It's these two guys that have been through a lot together. And it's like, if this is it, we need to do some acknowledgement before we go. They actually take all that time, and again, within the Lethal Weapon franchise, not something you see in very many other action movies.
And one of my favorite moments of the toilet scene is you get the great edit or cut where they're like, keep it on the down low, and it cuts to like the entire like fire department, cops, bomb squad, EOD, everything is there. And you get all the stuff where they're like, hey, so all right, we're gonna put this jacket on, we're gonna freeze dry, or for lack of a better word, whatever, so you have an extra second before detonation. All right, here's this. All right, Riggs, let's go. And Riggs is like, fuck you, no, I'm not going.
Yeah, that long stare.
And he's like, no. And he's like, okay, well, here, take my jacket. And then he's like, here's my gun. And he goes, keep good care of it, whatever. I'll be back for it later. And they call each other by like their first names or their last names. They never call each other by rank because like that they had a beer with this guy. They've hung out with this dude. They've had the poker night. And when they talk about the poker night, where unfortunately all those cops die, it's something where it's not like, hey, we're going to introduce poker night. It's like, no, this is the weekly poker night, guys. Remember, come over to the house. Let's hang out. But then you get the great moment where the head of the bomb squad closes like the blast door. He like puts the flap down, and there's all this chitter chatter, talking, all this noise. And as soon as he puts the blast door down, silence. And you just get in an action movie, you get a dude sitting on a toilet with his pants down, talking,
another guy sitting on the tub,
and they just talk. And it's such a, like we were saying, it could be like a one-act scene. Like you could do that as like a one-act play, and you don't even have to have it as like sitting on a toilet. You could just have them sitting there talking about friendship, because it really comes down to, again, what I love so much about the Lethal Weapon movies is the friendship between these two guys.
Yeah, and that scene really, to me, establishes a lot of the running gags that you brought up. It establishes their dynamic. It establishes the themes of friendship, but also the go on 3. Also, guys like us don't die on toilets. And I'm pretty sure toilet based Jeopardy is a running theme in this franchise. Also, the destruction of Murtaugh's house becomes a running theme. It never seems to end. Even Lethal Weapon 3, it's very prominent. But not just that. Most importantly, it establishes the shorthand between the two of them, where they're supposed to have this, dude, you mean so much, and we've been through so much together. But instead of saying all of those things, they just go, hey, man, no, I know.
And Mel does the classic thing where he doesn't actually cry, but he has the lump and the eyes get glassy. He's like, I know. And he does that kind of thing where he kind of fixes his throat, but he doesn't actually roll a tear, which is no one does that better than Mel Gibson. That could be a whole podcast on the Mel Gibson cry, the greatest non-crier but crier in movie history.
Yeah, he emotes with the best of them.
Yeah. He does that thing. He's throat hulks out and veins, and he gets huge.
A topographical map on his neck.
Yeah. He's just like, oh, I'm gonna fucking kill you. But we try to keep it just to Lethal Weapon 2 on this. But where do you think this falls in terms of performance-wise for Danny Glover and Mel Gibson?
Well, really, on the full scale, it becomes a fight between 1 and 2 if we're talking about performances. And it depends on which actor, I think. I think Murtaugh gets to be a bigger badass in this one. It's his moment.
He saves the day.
It's his thing at the end of the day. He gets the line that everyone knows.
Of course,
it's just been revoked.
Yeah,
everybody knows that. Which is, in the end, it's a pretty strange choice to have that be your cool thing you say.
Yeah, and then they've been decaffeinated.
Decaffeinated, which is the most it has such a timestamp on it. It's you can see the expiration date has faded totally away.
Yeah.
I had to think about decaffeinated for a long second. Oh, right, it's a racial slur.
Yeah.
Keffa.
Yeah.
Cool. And then by the time you get it, it's huh.
And even Danny Glover at the time, the way he plays it is, people aren't gonna get this in 1989 because he stops and he goes, they've been decaffeinated.
Decaffeinated.
Yeah, and Riggs is like, oh, you can't make me laugh, man. Yeah. But no, I mean, one is the one that takes itself seriously in a good way. It pays off. It works.
Yeah, and Unhinged Riggs is... It doesn't get better than the gun scene. You know what I mean? You the picture of the wife and the suicide, almost the near suicide. It's just... That was the most endearing thing, I think, to me in the whole franchise.
Yeah,
because after that, it's diminishing returns.
Yeah, it becomes what it created in terms of the buddy cop action, and they're still fun. 3 and 4 are fun. They're really, really a lot of fun. But
it becomes more about the bad guys.
It does. But I think it's just fascinating to think that if they killed Riggs, 1 and 2 becomes this. It's kind of like the prequels with Star Wars, where it becomes about Darth Vader. Where 1 and 2 becomes about this suicidal cop,
right?
Who kills himself. Basically,
suicide by a South African.
Yeah, the subtitle for Lethal Weapon 2.
Yeah, and you could even have that be the lowest moment of the franchise, replace him, and have the last two even be about can you live up to the shadow of Martin Riggs?
Yeah,
and have those two be you finally did. But I honestly think personally, now that we're fully speculating, that would have been a better franchise, but at least we got 4 movies with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover.
Yeah.
But as far as performance-wise, my final answer, Mel Gibson's better in the first one, Danny Glover's better in the second one.
Yeah.
But as a whole, the first 2, it's just I kind of now see it as a full thing.
Yeah.
Because it's just the total story of Martin Riggs coping with the loss of his wife. And then for 2/3 of a movie, he's cool, and then totally spins out.
Third
at
act
the
goes
end.
nuts. Well,
just loses it.
Speaking of 89, Mel Gibson was an original choice for Bruce Wayne in the Tim Burton Batman. And that's something that we're watching. We're could you imagine that shit? He's got he's an attractive dude. He's got the
chin.
The chin. He's the short. You could do the short hair. He looks like Bruce Wayne, but his Batman. What are you? He's tell our friends about me. Yeah.
Never dance with the devil in the pale moonlight.
Yeah. And I still to this day I'm like cast him as Dark Knight Returns. Bruce Wayne. He's the same. He's the age. He's the age now. Put on the muscle for Expendables 3. But
that's so perfect.
But yeah, and like why hasn't he played Frank Castle? Because he's basically playing him.
He has in several movies.
He has. Yeah, he has. But like with this, put on the skull shirt and go kick ass. But I mean, there was the thing about him, playing Wolverine and all these other characters and whatnot. But yeah, Lethal Weapon 2, man. I'm so glad that like I said, it pays to do your homework. It pays to do research because I feel like it really paid off us sitting down and being total nerds about this movie. Because I hope it'll like have other people think about the differences of what Lethal Weapon 2 could have been, and just discussions of these crazy plot points that work and don't work because of a changed ending.
Yeah, and not just that, like the I think by the end of 2 you get the peak, like it is totally crystallized in its purest form, all of the things that work about Lethal Weapon, the franchise itself, the running gags, the continuity, the Three Stooges thing, which if you're going to watch the movies as you listen to these podcasts, please pay attention to how much Mel Gibson could have been in a Three Stooges movie. The buddy cop dynamic, the explosion of the buddy cop dynamic, and then the pivot.
Yeah.
But I love this movie. And even after knowing what we know, I love it for a different reason now, because you know how troubled it is, and like it came out on top in the end. It made $250 million. Yeah. So it came out on top, and it's kind of cool to like look back on it and go, well, you were troubled at the time, but and in the end result is a very crowd-pleasing, fun movie that just it owns the genre that it helped create.
Yeah, I feel like this franchise is very much like the Terminator, where people, they don't forget about Lethal Weapon 1, they don't forget about the first Terminator movie, but it's more the serious, hey, this kind of created this thing, look at how well it did. And then everyone looks at T2 and Lethal Weapon 2 and they're like, it takes it and makes it big and awesome
huge.
And badass.
Yeah.
But I think 3 and 4 of Lethal Weapon are better than the Terminator sequels. But
Thank
I think
God.
I think the 1 and 2 aspect it works for that. But yeah, man, it was a fascinating ride watching Lethal Weapon 2 with you and dissecting this thing, man.
Yeah, I could not agree more, because now every time I'm going to watch this movie, which, it's always on some channel to be viewed in the background. Yeah. And it's
a Thanksgiving movie, technically, when they go to...
It is a Thanksgiving movie.
Yeah.
Every Shane Black movie is a holiday movie.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah.
And this is one of the only Thanksgiving movies. Are there any other Thanksgiving
the
movies?
first Rocky movie takes place on... this is going to make or break my Rocky cred. I think the opening shot of Rocky is November 25th is the date, or it's around there. I think. Otherwise, it totally ruins my Rocky cred. But and Creed comes out on the 25th, and it takes my favorite line in Rocky is they Adrian and Rocky's first date. They screw up. It's not November 25th. That makes no sense now because Thanksgiving takes place later in the movie. So I'm trying to save myself here. I think it's September. But anyway, Adrian and Rocky are going on a date. Paulie throws the turkey outside of the house. You want a bird? Go get the bird. And he goes, hey, let's go ice skating, whatever and she goes, yeah, but it's Thanksgiving. And he goes, yeah, to you, but to me it's Thursday, which I always thought was like one of the greatest lines in movie history. Like, it doesn't bother Rocky. Rocky lives by his own sets of rules. He's like, it's just Thursday. We'll go to an empty rink that we think's we're early, but it's really closed. But anyway, that's the first Thanksgiving thing that pops in my head. But anything you want to like plug or anything you're doing, or
for sure,
yeah.
Before I go, I definitely have to shout out the network that I work for, fanboysinc.com. They are a website that focuses on comic book reviews, news articles, interviews, and their own network of podcasts. We have 5 of them at the time. Okay. I think I don't want to get in trouble. Inkcast, the incredible Jeff and DW show, Popping the Cherrywood, which is a nerdy culinary show, which also does movie compendiums and anthology reviews, but with a cooking and culinary twist. Rob Flanagan cooks the best goddamn Christmas cookies I've ever had in my life. plenty of stuff to check out there all the time. Please check us out. We're starting to get publisher love. Dark Horse is sending me and our reviewer the full library editions of The Goon.
Nice.
And I think maybe even Hellboy. Thanks to Buddy Beaudoin for being such a great writer. But anything else, Mike? Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. The Mike Sains on Instagram. Mike Sains on Twitter. SAINS. Other than that, I got nothing.
That's right. Do it. Check out his reviews. Check out just the craziness of Mike Sains, man. I appreciate you being on. You definitely don't deserve to die on a toilet, my friend. So thanks for being on the Lethal Weapon 2. Guys Like Us Don't Die on Toilets, a Lethal Weapon retrospective. This has been Lethal Weapon 2. Have a good night, guys.
We're going to go on 3 or on 3?